The scream that tore through our quiet cul-de-sac wasn't from a child, a car crash, or even the startled bark of a dog. It came from HOA President Karen herself, bellowing with the kind of rage only someone convinced of their own untouchable authority could muster. She was storming up the driveway toward Rachel, our new neighbor, the woman Karen had dismissed as simple ever since she moved in, a widow who dressed plainly, gardened quietly, and never spoke much unless spoken to. Karen's large body seemed to quake with fury, her fists balled, her face beet red as she spat words sharp enough to make every head turn. "You think you can ignore me? You think you can just waltz in here and break every rule in my neighborhood?" Rachel didn't answer right away. She stood in front of her modest home, one hand on the leash of her 2 German shepherds. They weren't barking, not yet, just watching Karen with the intense stillness of animals trained not to waste energy. Rachel's eyes stayed calm, but her jaw was tight, her posture steady. She looked less like a fragile woman about to be bullied and more like someone bracing for impact. My wife whispered beside me, "Karen's going too far this time." I could only nod, my heart pounding at the sight of that storm brewing. The moment Karen stepped past the property line, Rachel's dogs stiffened, their ears pricked. Karen noticed, but didn't stop. She swung her arm wide and slapped a paper onto Rachel's chest. "Here, a fine for unauthorized structures and dangerous animals." Rachel didn't flinch. She took the paper, glanced at it, and then tore it neatly in half, letting the pieces drift down like snow at Karen's feet. The crowd that had gathered, neighbors drawn by the shouting, gasped as one. Karen's face twisted with shock, then fury. "How dare you?" she screeched, lunging forward with a shove that knocked Rachel back a step. And that was when it happened. Rachel didn't move a muscle, but her dogs did. Trained to respond not to words, but to threats, both shepherds exploded forward in perfect unison, barking with the thunder of war drums. The sound reverberated through every ribcage on the block. They leapt between Karen and Rachel, teeth bared, their sheer force sending Karen stumbling backward, arms flailing. The fine she had clutched crumpled into the dirt. People screamed, phones shot up, recording every second as Karen landed on her backside in the middle of Rachel's yard. "Control your beasts," Karen shrieked, trying to scramble up. But Rachel's calm voice finally rang out, low and clear. "They're not beasts. They're protectors. And they're better trained than you'll ever understand." Her words carried a weight that silenced even the dogs, who held their ground like statues, still growling, eyes never leaving the trembling HOA tyrant. The truth came crashing down in that instant, but not from Rachel. It came from the neighbor who stepped out from the crowed-in older man with a faded army cap. His voice was gravel but strong. "Those aren't pets. They're retired military K9s. Rachel's late husband trained them for service overseas. And when he passed, the army entrusted them to her because they knew she could handle them. She's not some simple woman. She's a veteran's wife who knows discipline better than any of us." The twist hit like a lightning bolt. Whispers surged. "Military dogs? That explains everything." Karen tried to fight her. Karen's eyes widened, her arrogance flickering into fear. She looked small now, ridiculous even, sitting on the ground while 2 battle-tested K9s watched her every twitch. She tried to laugh it off, but the sound cracked. "This is insane. She can't have weapons like that in a neighborhood." The army vet cut her off, his voice sharp. "Those dogs aren't weapons. They're heroes. They save lives. More than you could ever say about your HOA meetings." The confrontation spiraled into chaos. Karen tried to push herself to her feet, screaming about lawsuits and liabilities. But each time she moved too quickly, the shepherds inched closer, their growls rising, their training impeccable. Rachel never raised her voice, never wavered. She simply snapped her fingers once, and the dogs fell silent, sitting like stone pillars. The control, the respect, the bond, it was undeniable. Every neighbor watching knew exactly who the true leader was, and it wasn't the woman flailing on the ground. Karen's downfall began right there. But it wasn't complete until the flashing red and blue lights appeared at the end of the street. Someone had called the police after hearing the shouting, and now 2 officers strode up, taking in the surreal scene. An HOA president screaming from the lawn, a calm widow standing steady, and 2 magnificent dogs guarding her like sentinels. The neighbors rushed forward, voices overlapping, each eager to tell the officers the truth. And the truth painted a picture Karen couldn't escape: her trespass, her assault, her attempt to intimidate someone she thought was weak, all of it recorded from half a dozen angles. Rachel spoke only once to the officers, her tone respectful but resolute. These dogs did what they were trained to do. They stopped a threat. That's all. The officers nodded, their eyes already scanning the sea of witnesses. Karen tried to interrupt, but one officer held up his hand. "Ma'am, you're the one who crossed onto her property. You're the one who made physical contact. And you're the one everyone here is accusing of harassment. If anyone's in trouble tonight, it's you." The color drained from Karen's face. She sputtered, pleaded, tried to twist the narrative, but for the first time in years her words held no sway. The neighbors she once ruled through fear now stood united, shaking their heads, filming her humiliation, watching as her empire crumbled not with a bang, but with the steady, disciplined growls of two loyal K9s and the unflinching strength of a woman she had underestimated. The air hung heavy, charged with tension, as the officers asked Karen to stand up. She stumbled to her feet, her expensive blouse smeared with dirt, her hair sticking to her damp face. She jabbed a shaking finger toward Rachel, still standing steady with her K9s sitting neatly at her side, and shouted, "She's dangerous. Those dogs could have killed me. Arrest her before it's too late." Her voice cracked into a near scream, but no one believed her anymore. Every pair of eyes, every raised phone camera, every murmur in the crowd told the truth. She wasn't the victim, she was the aggressor. Rachel's daughter, a teenager no one ever saw speak much, stepped forward then. Her voice trembled at first, but gained strength with every word. "My mom didn't do anything wrong. Mrs. Karen came here screaming, waving papers, and then she shoved my mom. The dogs only reacted because they thought she was being attacked." Tears glistened on her cheeks as she looked up at the officers. "My dad died in service. These dogs were his team. Mom takes care of them because they're the last piece of him we have. Please don't let her twist this." The crowd fell silent. The weight of that revelation struck everyone at once. Rachel wasn't just a quiet widow with dogs. She was a woman carrying the legacy of a fallen soldier, protecting the animals he'd trusted with his life. Suddenly, the narrative Karen had spun that Rachel was weak, unfit, a rule breaker collapsed into dust. She had targeted the one person in the neighborhood who least deserved cruelty. The twist deepened when Officer Ramirez, the taller of the two policemen, adjusted his belt and cleared his throat. "Ma'am," he said to Rachel, "what's your husband's name?" Rachel's eyes flickered with grief, but her voice was steady. "Captain Daniel Moore, 3rd Infantry." Ramirez's face shifted instantly, softening with recognition. "I served with him overseas." Gasps rippled through the crowd. The officer took a deep breath, his voice low and reverent. "Your husband saved my convoy outside Kabul. If it weren't for him, I wouldn't be standing here today." Every neighbor seemed to inhale at once. The story they thought they were watching a petty HOA spat had become something deeper, almost sacred. Karen's cruelty had collided with the legacy of a man who had given everything for his country. And the officer standing before them was living proof of that sacrifice. Karen's face twisted with panic as she realized the ground beneath her had crumbled completely. The officers didn't need more testimony, but they got it anyway. One neighbor after another stepped forward, their voices rising with years of pent-up frustration. "She fined me for my porch lights, but pocketed the money. She threatened to have my truck towed when it was parked on my own driveway. She tried to kick my son off the playground for being too loud. It was like a dam had broken, decades of fear and silence spilling out in a flood of accusations. And every single word was caught on dozens of recording devices." Karen shrieked, "Lies. All of it." Her arms flailed, her words tumbling into incoherent rants. But the sight of her, red-faced and spitting, standing against an entire neighborhood united, was her undoing. The officers finally moved in, their tone clipped and official. "Ma'am, you are under investigation for harassment, trespassing, and potential fraud tied to HOA funds. You'll need to come with us." The snap of the handcuffs was like thunder in the quiet street. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then someone whispered, "It's over." And just like that, the neighborhood erupted not with cheers, but with a wave of relieved voices, hands on shoulders, neighbors finally connecting without fear. The sound of Rachel's dogs exhaling heavily, lying back down at her feet, was almost poetic. They had done their job. The threat was neutralized. Karen was escorted to the squad car, her protests dwindling into pitiful sobs. For the first time, she looked small, not powerful, not terrifying, just pitiful. When the door slammed shut behind her, I felt the entire block breathe again. Rachel bent down, stroked her dogs' heads, and whispered, "Good job, boys." They wagged their tails, their intensity melting into calm, as if the storm had passed. The days that followed transformed everything. News of the incident spread, fueled by the videos neighbors uploaded. Headlines splashed across local channels. HOA president arrested after attacking veteran's widow. One clip, showing Rachel's dog stepping between her and Karen, went viral with the caption, "When justice has 4 legs and teeth." The story was no longer just about our cul-de-sac. It had become a national conversation about power, abuse, and the underestimated strength of so-called ordinary people. Investigators uncovered more: missing funds, fabricated fines, intimidation tactics Karen had used for years. Families who had quietly suffered under her regime now stepped forward with evidence. The HOA dissolved under public pressure, replaced by a volunteer committee that operated with transparency. No more secret fines. No more threats. For the first time in years, the community felt free. Rachel remained humble through it all. When a reporter asked her how it felt to bring down such a powerful figure, she simply said, "I didn't bring her down. Her own choices did. I just stood my ground." And when the camera panned to her dogs sitting loyally by her side, the anchor's voice cracked with emotion. Some heroes were uniforms. Others were collars. The most powerful moment came weeks later when Officer Ramirez visited Rachel with his family. He knelt by the dogs, tears glistening in his eyes, and whispered, "Thank you for keeping them safe, the way he kept us safe." Rachel placed her hand on his shoulder, her eyes shining with gratitude and grief. The neighborhood watched quietly, realizing they were witnessing something greater than a simple victory. It was healing, respect, and honor interwoven. Karen, meanwhile, faced trial. The evidence was overwhelming. Her attempts to twist the narrative failed, her lawyer's arguments fell flat, and the jury's verdict was swift. Convicted of fraud, harassment, and abuse of power, she was sentenced to prison. The once feared HOA president left in chains, her empire of intimidation reduced to rubble. In the end, the real lesson wasn't about dogs, or property, or even HOAs. It was about underestimation. Karen had thought Rachel was a simple woman, an easy target. She didn't see the steel beneath her quiet demeanor, the loyalty of her animals, the depth of her husband's legacy, or the strength of a community waiting for a reason to rise. Now, when I walk past Rachel's home, I see children petting her dogs, neighbors dropping off fresh vegetables from their gardens, and laughter drifting through the air where shouting used to live. The K9s still sit by the porch, ever watchful, but their eyes are softer now, their tails wagging freely. And Rachel? She smiles more often, her head held high not because she sought victory, but because she proved to everyone, including herself, that she was never powerless. And maybe that's the greatest justice of all, that Karen's cruelty built the stage for Rachel's quiet strength to shine, and when the curtain fell, the whole world saw who truly deserved respect. So what do you think? Did Karen get the punishment she deserved, or should the community have handled it differently? Share your thoughts because every voice matters when deciding what's truly right or wrong.